Hello, boring dreamers. Tonight we drift into the heart of gold and dust into the empire of Mali, where the sunsets shimmer like molten coins and stories hum through the air like low music. You're standing in Niani, sometime around the early 1300s, and the entire city smells of warm earth, wood smoke, and the sweet tongue of tamarind. In the distance, someone is plucking the strings of a kora, and the notes roll toward you like a soft wind. You probably want to survive this, not because of war or famine, but because history here moves too slowly for modern nerves. Everything feels eternal. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it there right now? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to a city rising from the riverbank, where mud brick houses glow like gold in the afternoon sun. Niani is no mere townlet, as the pulse of an empire that stretches from the Sahara's edge to the Atlantic forests. You hear donkeys braying, traders shouting, and griots royal storytellers chanting praises of kings long gone. Somewhere, a blacksmith's hammer keeps time with the rhythm of a distant drum, a sound that never quite stops, even in sleep. Gold is everywhere. It glints from bracelets, dusts the fingers of merchants, and hides deep in the soil under your feet. It's not just wealth, it's identity. The empire's might depends on it, but its spirit? That belongs to the music. Every royal ceremony, every caravan send-off, every act of remembrance begins and ends with song. You're standing by the Niger River, where fishermen sing as they cast their nets, and children dance in the shallows. It feels like the world itself has a tempo. You can almost hear the rhythm of centuries. A drumbeat that began before writing, before kings, before even Musa himself. Historians still argue whether Niani was truly the capital of Mansa Musa's empire or just one of several golden cities. Some say the real seat of power lay farther west. Others swear the ruins still sleep beneath the forest near modern Guinea. But no matter where the throne once stood, this soundscape of voices and instruments is what made Mali pulse. The music is not decoration, it's authority. The griots don't just perform, they remember. Every king's genealogy, every war, every victory, every shameful mistake preserved in melody. To play a wrong note in this world is not merely error, it's sacrilege. You, a nameless boy among thousands, watch the elder musicians with awe. They wear robes so fine, they catch the light like fire, and their instruments, koras, balafons, and ngonis, are treated as living beings. Before they play, they whisper to them, stroke them, sometimes even offer bits of kola nut or drops of palm wine. A joke murmurs through the crowd that the instruments eat better than the musicians themselves. One afternoon, you see an old griot seated beneath a baobab tree, his fingers tracing invisible notes in the air. You inch closer. He catches your gaze and smiles without teeth. Every sound, he says, is a memory trying to stay alive. You don't yet understand, but something in you shifts. That night, when the drums begin again, you tap your fingers against the ground, trying to copy their rhythm. And that's where your story begins. Not in a palace, not in gold, but in a child's quiet fascination. The empire hums around you. Caravan bells jingle far away. The call to prayer rolls gently over the rooftops, mingling with laughter and the rustle of silk traders unpacking wares from Morocco. You watch sparks drift upward from cooking fires and think they look like notes rising into the night sky. It's easy to forget, centuries later, how alive this place was, how its energy reached Cairo and Granada, and even the markets of Venice. But at the center of that energy is you, small, barefoot, clutching a half-broken drum made from a goat's skin, daring to believe you can speak the language of kings. One day, perhaps you will, But for now, you listen. Always listen. Because in Mali, music isn't just sound, it's survival. The night grows deeper. Someone nearby begins. You grow up with sand between your toes and rhythm in your bones. The mornings are always the same roosters crying somewhere behind clay walls. Smoke from cooking fires curling into the pale dawn. And if you listen carefully, the faint thump of a drum from far off, as if the earth itself is stretching awake. You chase goats, fetch water, and pretend not to notice how your heart beats in time with that sound. Your mother tells you to focus on more useful things, like learning to trade salt or herd cattle. But your hands betray you. They tap the side of water pots, slap against your thighs, and drum on the walls of your house until the neighbors shout. You can't help it, rhythm feels like breathing. Every few days, a troop of traveling griots passes through the village. They're the closest thing your world has to celebrities. You've seen how people clear space for them in the market square, how the elders bow slightly when they begin to sing. They carry news, stories, and the entire history of Mali in their voices. Their instruments gleam with carved designs. Crocodiles, suns, the swirling symbols of lineage. When one griot lifts his ngoni, a kind of four-stringed lute carved from calabash and goat hide, you feel something electric crawl up your spine. The first note he plucks is bright, raw, and so alive it almost hurts your ears. That's when you decide, silently, that you'll learn to make that sound. Of course, nobody takes you seriously. You're just a skinny child with too much curiosity and not enough food in your belly. But every night, after chores and prayers, you sneak behind your family's hut with a broken bowl and a stick, mimicking the rhythms you heard that day. You don't realize it, but you're already training your hands to remember what your ears crave. Historians still argue whether musical training in medieval Mali was formalized like in North Africa, or passed only through families. Some say the griot clans guarded their secrets so fiercely that outsiders couldn't even watch them rehearse. Others believe the music flowed freely between farmers, hunters, and merchants, shared as naturally as stories by the fire. Whatever the truth, you find your teachers not in classrooms, but in marketplaces and moonlit courtyards. You start following one griot in particular, an older man named Sadio. His beard is gray, his back curved, and his patience thin, but his voice carries like thunder. He catches you lingering one night and asks, without turning, "Do you know why the drum never lies?" You shake your head. "Because," he says, "it repeats the heart. And hearts don't lie, only people do." Then he hands you a small gem with a rip in the hide. Fix it, and maybe you'll learn something. That becomes your test. You spend days stretching, patching, and tuning it with strips of rawhide. You burn your fingers on hot pegs, slice your palms on the edges, and nearly give up twice. When you finally manage to make it sound right, Sadio only nods. "Now," he says, "you can listen properly." From then on, you trail behind him like a shadow. You learn the meaning of the griot's chants, the genealogies of the Keda dynasty, the ancient battles, the proverbs hidden in melody. Every pattern has purpose. Every pause is deliberate. The griot doesn't just play for joy. He plays to maintain balance in the world. Sometimes, Sadio lets you carry his instrument. You feel important, striding through the dusty square, pretending the weight on your shoulder is destiny instead of gourd and wood. Once, he even lets you join in a single trembling beat during a wedding performance. No one seems to notice, but for you, it's like touching the stars. Still, it's not an easy life. Griots are respected and resented all at once. They hold power through words, yet they depend on the generosity of nobles. You hear adults whisper that a griot's praise can make a man immortal, but his curse can ruin entire families. That duality fascinates you. How can music, so beautiful, carry so much danger? One night, during a thunderstorm, Sadio plays a melody you've never heard before. Minor, aching. He says it's a song for kings who forget where they came from. Even emperors, he tells you, need to be reminded that they'll one day be stories too. That idea plants itself deep in your mind. You don't just want to play music. You want to remember with it, to be part of that invisible chain linking past to present. And as the rain turns the red dust to mud, you realize that this too is history being written not on parchment or stone, but in rhythm and voice. Somewhere out there, the young Prince Musa is beginning his rise to power. You don't know it yet, but his story and yours are quietly moving toward each other, like two notes destined to harmonize. When morning comes, Sadio is gone, leaving only his old drum where he sat. The hide still smells of rain. You strike it once, and the sound seems to carry farther than it should, as if answering something far away in the golden capital. You stand there for a long time, listening to you. You spend the next few years learning to listen more than you speak. The drum becomes your diary, the kora your confession. Days stretch endlessly across the savannah, filled with work and rhythm. Sometimes you haul water. Sometimes you practice until your palms blister. When the call to prayer drifts across the fields, you rest your instruments and hum along, half in reverence, half in exhaustion. Learning music in Mali isn't just about sound, it's about memory. You begin to realize that every note means something. When your master plucks a particular string, it could be the sound of rainfall on millet crops, or the whisper of ancestors approving a union. When he switches the rhythm, it's like changing the page in a storybook only he can read. You learn the scales, first pentatonic, modal, bending tones between pitches like speech. Then the structure, call and response, repetition, improvisation. Music, your master says, is how we talk to the spirits when words aren't enough. You're never quite sure if he's joking, but you don't ask. Historians still argue whether the griots of Mansa Musa's era invented their melodies or preserved older man traditions. Some say new compositions arose after contact with traders from North Africa. Others believe the songs are as ancient as the Niger itself. But what's certain is that the music is alive. It changes, breathes, and moves with every player. You spend long evenings under the baobab trees, repeating one rhythm over and over until your hands move automatically. The older griots tease you for your intensity. You'll wear out your soul before the drum, one says. You grin, too tired to reply. Sometimes you dream in rhythm. In your sleep, footsteps sync with drum beats. Voices blend into the kora's shimmer, and laughter turns into melody. You wake up confused, not sure where the music ends, and your thoughts begin. One afternoon, your master brings you to a festival in a neighboring village. The entire community gathers in a wide clearing. Traders set up stalls selling dyed cloth, carved ivory, and golden dust sealed in leather pouches. The air hums with the smell of roasted goat and sweet tamarind. Your task is simple. Keep the pulse steady while the older griots sing. But simplicity, you learn quickly, is deceptive. The moment your hands hesitate, the rhythm falters and dancers stumble. You panic until your master's voice cuts through the chaos. Listen, not to yourself, to them. You adjust. You stop thinking about your own timing and focus on the sound of the dancer's feet, the sway of their hips, the breath between chants. And suddenly, everything locks together. The world becomes one enormous heartbeat. When the song ends, the dancers cheer, and a small boy hands you a gourd of water as if you've done something divine. You drink deeply, half dazed, and your master nods. Now, he says softly, you understand. From that day, the village treats you differently. Children chase after you, asking you to play. Elders offer advice. Someone even calls you Jelly, the man word for griot, though you're not yet worthy of it. The name warms you anyway. As your skill grows, so does your awareness of power. You start noticing how people react when your master performs for a noble. A single song can settle an argument, forge a marriage alliance, or restore a broken friendship. The music is law disguised as art. And yet, there's something dangerous in that power. Once, during a feast, a griot mocks a local chief too cleverly. The laughter turns sharp, and within hours, he's banished. That night, you ask your master why he risked it. Because, he says, truth and flattery share the same rhythm. Sometimes you miss the beat. You remember that lesson forever. Still, the music keeps calling. You travel from village to village, learning different dialects of rhythm. The rolling beat of the Fulani, the intricate syncopation of the Bambara. You even meet traders from far-off places who hum strange songs about camels and stars. They tell you about Timbuktu, where scholars write books made of gold and ideas. You can barely imagine it. At night, you sit by the fire, tracing circles in the sand with your finger, pretending each swirl is a melody waiting to be played. You wonder what lies beyond your little world of drums and stories. One day, a messenger arrives from the royal court. His robes shimmer like the river under sunlight, and his voice carries the weight of authority. He brings news. Mansa Musa, the ruler of Mali, will soon begin preparations for something grand, a journey beyond the desert itself. You don't yet know how your life will entwine with that destiny. But when your master hears the news, he grows silent. He turns to you and says, "Practice harder." When the Mansa calls, the griots must be ready. That night, as you play by the river, you notice your reflection trembling with every beat. For the first time, you realize that your music might one day reach a king's ear. And that thought both thrills and terrifies you. The morning sun rises red as iron over the plains, and today your heartbeat races faster than the drums. You no longer a child tapping pots in secret. You a young musician with calloused hands, a handful of songs memorized, and the faint smell of goat hide and sweat clinging to you like pride. Today you'll perform before nobles for the first time. Your master, Sadio, has been invited to the estate of a local chief named Diabati, a man rumored to judge musicians by how much gold he tosses at their feet. You've heard the stories. A single note off-key, and he'll dismiss a performer forever. But if he likes you, he might give you an entire cow. It is hard to say which is more intimidating, the power of his wealth or the silence before his applause. The courtyard fills with people by mid-morning. Nobles in embroidered tunics fan themselves lazily. Traders murmur in Arabic, and somewhere nearby, a griot recites the lineage of the Diabate family, his voice weaving through the hot air like incense smoke. You stand behind Sadio, gripping your drum so tightly that your knuckles turn white. When the music begins, your hands move almost by instinct. The rhythm starts soft, like the first patter of rain on dry earth. Sadio's voice enters, rich and deep, telling of the Diabate ancestors who rode with Sandiata Keita, himself the founder of the empire. You had flourishes between verses, careful not to overpower him. Every note matters. Historians still argue whether griots during Musa's reign performed purely for entertainment or as court advisors disguised in rhythm. In truth, they were both. Musicians, diplomats, and historians rolled into one. Even now, as you play for the chief, you see how words shape reality. When Sadio praises Diabate's courage, the man's chest swells. When he recalls his family's debt to the king, the chief's eyes narrow slightly. The music is no longer just sound, it's negotiation. Halfway through the performance, Sadio pauses to sip water. You don't stop. You strike your drum harder, letting the rhythm fill the silence. The crowd stirs. Some smile, others whisper. Sadio glances at you, just a flicker of approval, but in that look is a world of pride. When the final note fades, a hush lingers. Then the chief claps once, sharply. Servants step forward with small sacks of salt and a single coin of gold payment for the performance. Sadio bows. You do too, trembling slightly. The chief's gaze drifts over you. That one, he says, has the fire of a messenger. Keep him near. You don't sleep that night. You replay every note in your head, every glance, every mistake. And when dawn creeps in, you're still awake, tapping your fingers on your chest, imagining how the next song could be better. From that day forward, your name begins to circulate in the villages. You become the boy who played for Diabet. People greet you differently. Even merchants let you sample their wares before paying. Fame, it turns out, smells faintly of roasted millet and fear. You want more of it, but it never feels secure. Soon, invitations come from neighboring towns. You perform at weddings, at harvest celebrations, even once at a funeral for a wealthy trader whose relatives insisted the griots play him into paradise. You begin to understand that the music of Mali has no single mood. It can celebrate, mourn, teach, and threaten all at once. During one feast, a foreign merchant from the desert caravan approaches you. His robe is dusty, his accent strange, and his hands glitter with rings. Your rhythms, he says, remind me of the wind in the dunes. He speaks of Timbuktu, a place where scholars write songs with ink instead of strings. He even shows you a piece of parchment covered in Arabic script. You can't read it, but the curves of the letters look like melody frozen in time. The merchant laughs when you say that aloud. Perhaps one day, he says, you'll travel north and make the sand dance. You think he's joking, but later, when you lie awake listening to the crickets, you realize you want that to see the world beyond your drum. That same night, Sadio tells you he's growing tired. His fingers ache, his voice cracks more often, and his journeys are shorter now. Soon, he says, you'll lead the performances. You protest, but he shakes his head. Every griot must face silence one day. You can't run from it, you can only fill it. Weeks later, at another noble ceremony, Sadio gestures for you to step forward. The audience expects him, but he waves you ahead. You kneel, take a breath, and begin. The first few notes tremble, then settle, smooth as river water. You sing not perfectly, not confidently, but honestly. And the moment the crowd joins in clapping, your fear dissolves. When you finish, Sadio looks at you with eyes half proud, half sad. You don't realize it then, but it's the last time you'll perform together. He passes away quietly 2 moons later. His drum sits untouched in the corner of your hut. You don't cry, not at first. But the next time you perform, your rhythm slips just once. The river glitters like molten bronze when you leave your village. You carry only your drum, your master's old string of beads, and a half-finished song. The elders gather to wish you farewell. Some clap, some murmur prayers, some pretend not to care. You, though your chest is pounding. You're chasing something bigger than applause now. Word has spread that Mansa Musa himself is assembling musicians for his royal court. The richest man alive wants griots whose voices can move the heavens, whose rhythms can steady armies. No one knows what he's planning, but rumor says it involves a pilgrimage, a journey across the desert to the holy city of Mecca. You can hardly picture a desert, let alone a holy city. But you imagine endless gold and the echo of drums on sand, and that's enough. Your path leads north. Villages thin out, the air dries, and the red soil turns pale as bone. You travel with a caravan of traders for safety. At night, by the fireside, they swap stories about salt mines, bandits, and the distant sea. You tell them stories of Sadio and the river songs of Malai. and they listen, smiling in the flickering firelight. One evening, you play a soft rhythm to lull the camels. It works mostly. One camel sways a little too much and nearly sits on your drum. He approves. One trader laughs. You decide to count it as a compliment. Historians still argue whether Musa's court truly sought musicians from across the empire, or simply elevated existing griots from royal families. What's clear, though, is that during his reign, music became more than tradition. It became diplomacy. A well-timed song could open a gate faster than an army. After many weeks, the caravan crests a hill, and there it is, Niani, capital of the Mali Empire. You've heard tales of its beauty, but nothing prepares you. The city sprawls along the river, built of sun-baked clay that glows like honey in the evening light. Palm trees sway between domed roofs, and somewhere, faintly, you hear drums. You pass through the gates, overwhelmed by color cloth dyed indigo, spices piled high, beads, leather, ivory. The air smells of roasted nuts and dust. You're re-guided to the musicians' quarters by a servant who doesn't say much except, "Play well, and you'll eat well." Fair enough. Your lodging is simple. A hut with woven mats and one battered stool. You're told to report at dawn to the palace for an audition. You hardly sleep. Every creak outside sounds like fate knocking. The palace courtyard the next morning is massive, larger than any field you've ever seen. Rows of musicians wait their turn. Drummers, singers, kora players, flute makers. Some look calm, others terrified. You try to appear relaxed, though your stomach feels like it's been tied in knots. When your turn comes, a steward gestures to the center of the courtyard. "Play something worthy," he says. No pressure. You kneel, close your eyes, and begin the rhythm sadio once used to call the rain. It starts slow, steady, hypnotic. You layer it with hums, letting your voice melt into the drumbeat. Then you shift, introducing a new rhythm, faster, brighter. You can feel the air thicken as people stop talking. Even the birds seem to pause. When you finish, the silence is long and heavy. Then a voice deep, calm says, "That rhythm. Where did you learn it?" You look up. The Mansa himself stands on a raised platform, surrounded by gold, his robes white as moonlight. His gaze is steady, not unkind, but commanding. "My master taught me, my lord," you answer softly. He nods once. "Then your master was wise. You will serve in my court." You bow so deeply your forehead touches the dust. When you rise, the other musicians glance at you, some envious, some impressed. A guard hands you a thin chain with a golden bead, the mark of a royal musician. It's heavier than you expect. Your duties begin immediately. You learn the structure of the court, the scholars, the scribes, the merchants, the generals. And above them all, the Mansa, who rules with wealth so vast that even his sandals are rumored to be gilded. You witness feasts where trays of gold dust are used like salt, and envoys from Cairo bow so low their foreheads leave prints on the marble floor. Yet amid all this grandeur, it's the music that binds everything together. Morning songs greet the Mansa, afternoon chants mark his audiences, and evening rhythms send him into restful contemplation. You play until your arms ache, but you never complain. Each performance feels like standing on the edge of something sacred. One evening, after a long recital, a senior court musician approaches you. His name is Bakri Thin, sharp-eyed, voice like dry leaves. "You play well," he says. "But do you listen well?" You wake up before dawn, the horizon still a pale bruise of indigo and sand-dust pink. The courtyard hums faintly, hooves shifting, slaves murmuring, the rustle of silk banners being tied to long poles. Today, you're not playing for a private feast or a royal council. Today, you're playing for departure. Mansa Musa's pilgrimage to Mecca is finally leaving the city. The entire capital, Niani, has turned into an orchestra of chaos. Donkeys squeal, Camels groan, scribes count gold bars until their fingers cramp, and you're struggling to find your favorite drum, which some careless porter buried under bales of salt. Historians still argue whether it was Musa's faith or his showmanship that made this journey legendary. You suspect it was both. You stand near the musicians' caravan rows of kora players, ngoni pluckers, and griots carrying memory itself in their throats. They tune quietly, each note catching the dry morning air. The court astrologer, who once told you you'd die of boredom, not violence, adjusts his scarf beside you. He's wrong. There's no boredom here, only a kind of holy exhaustion that feels endless. As the sun finally lifts, Mansa Musa appears. He is radiant in gold-threaded robes, each fold glinting like a signal to the heavens. Around him, guards in scarlet cloth lift their spears in silent salute. You bow so low your forehead almost kisses the sand. The music begins not a song, but a sound that swells, ancient and slow. You beat your drum softly at first, a rhythm meant not for men, but for the journey itself. The camels begin to move, hooves sinking deep into the red earth. The procession stretches for miles, a moving river of wealth. You ride near the front, your drum strapped to your lap, your calloused fingers aching already. Behind you trail 100 soldiers, servants, traders, even wives of minor nobles, hoping to glimpse the world beyond Mali. Someone starts singing about the river Niger, how it bends like a sleeping god. The melody catches, spreading backward like a fire in dry grass. As the caravan winds through the outskirts of the city, people gather on rooftops, waving palm leaves and shouting blessings. A child tosses a flower at your camel's feet. It lands softly on the sand, then disappears beneath hooves. You wonder if you'll see home again. By midday, the heat is an invisible weight pressing against your lungs. The gold-laden camels glitter so brightly that travelers squint and curse. You wipe sweat from your eyes and squint at the shimmering horizon. Somewhere ahead, the desert waits endless, merciless, magnificent. Later that night, you sit by a fire, eating millet porridge from a wooden bowl. Around you, the court murmurs in half-sleep. A scribe complains that his ink has dried up. Another jokes that he'll write in camel spit instead. You chuckle quietly. Humor keeps men alive longer than courage. You tap your drum once, twice, feeling the echo in your bones. Across the dunes, another musician answers, a low note from his ngoni that sounds almost like laughter. The sound carries far in the still air. That is when you realize the truth. This journey isn't just about gold or God. It's about sound, the heartbeat of Mali, stretching across the desert. As the fire dims, you lean back, eyes heavy. The sand is cold now, the sky an ocean of stars. Someone snores softly near the camels. You think of home, the smell of wet earth after rain, the lazy buzz of flies near the river. And then, like every performer who's ever chased destiny, you drift to sleep mid-dream, drum still warm against your chest. You wake to a strange silence. Not the sleepy quiet of dawn, but a stillness so thick it feels like the air itself is holding its breath. The desert stretches endless and empty around you. No birds, no rustling leaves, not even the whisper of wind. Only the slow groan of camels, shifting their weight like bored kings. The caravan has entered the Sahara proper now. Every grain of sand feels older than time. You can taste salt on the wind, though there's no sea for thousands of miles. Someone said it's the spirits of ancient merchants, still wandering after losing their way. Historians still argue whether those stories were myths or subtle warnings passed down through generations. You're not sure you care anymore. You're too busy trying to keep sand out of your drum. By mid-morning, the sun has become a tyrant. It rules over you without mercy. Sweat trickles down your back, stinging your skin. The gold-laden camels shimmer like walking furnaces, and one musician collapses, his kora strings snapping like dried reeds. Two servants rush to shade him with a cloth, while the others whisper prayers. You play a slow rhythm, steady, deep, almost meditative, to keep the line moving. Your drumbeat becomes the measure of survival. Each pulse tells the others, we're still alive. You find yourself thinking of home again, of the laughter that used to fill the courtyard before every feast, the smell of roasted plantains, the warm hum of gossip. You'd give a fortune just to hear that noise again. As the sun sets, painting the dunes in blood orange and purple, the caravan finally stops. Everyone moves like ghosts. You can barely lift your arms, but Musa insists on evening prayers. The musicians gather near him, forming a circle around a single lantern. His face glows golden in the light, his eyes sharp and calm. You begin to play softly. The rhythm is not joyful, it's reverent, like a heartbeat underwater. Musa closes his eyes and begins to recite verses from the Quran, his voice a smooth river in the dark. For a moment, the desert listens. Even the wind holds back, afraid to interrupt. After prayers, the griots take over. They sing of ancestors who tamed rivers, of hunters who spoke to lions, of Mali's founding kings who carved their empires with courage and wisdom. You add your drum beneath their words, grounding the story in something human, something that feels like breathing. A young boy, one of Musa's nephews, maybe leans close to ask you how long you've been playing. You shrug. Since I had hands. You whisper. He grins, eyes shining in the firelight. Then he asks, do you think God hears the music too? You look up at the sky, where stars burn like polished copper. If he doesn't, you say, then who gave us rhythm? The boy laughs, but quietly, as though afraid to wake the sand. Later, when everyone sleeps, you stay awake. The fire has burned low, leaving only embers. You see one spark rise, twist, and vanish like a soul being carried home. Somewhere out there, you imagine Timbuktu's scholars already writing about this pilgrimage, calling it holy, magnificent, divine. But they'll never write about the blisters on your hands, or the way gold dust clings to your eyelashes when the wind changes direction. A desert fox cries out in the distance, thin and eerie. You think of the griot songs, how every sound has a spirit. Maybe that fox is one of them, calling to you. Or maybe it's just hungry. Either way, you drum your fingers on the sand, answering softly. The stars seem closer here, as if the sky itself is bending down to listen. When sleep finally takes you, it's heavy and dreamless. Tomorrow, you'll march again. The dunes will shift, the air will sting, and the rhythm will return steady, faithful, ancient. You are, after all, one of Mansa Musa's musicians. And music, like gold, never stops moving. By the time you reach the salt towns of Tagaza, you've begun to think that the entire world is made of dust. Everything your robes, your lips, even your thoughts feels dry. The drums sound hollow here, as if the earth itself refuses to echo back. Tagaza is not beautiful. It smells of salt, sweat, and slow decay. The huts are built entirely of salt blocks, stacked like pale bones under a sky that never blinks. Yet here, wealth speaks louder than beauty. Caravans from all corners of Africa meet to trade. Gold for salt, slaves for horses, stories for silence. You and the other musicians are ordered to play as the court sets up camp outside the town. Mansa Musa wants the locals to see who he is, the man whose footsteps glint with fortune. You strike your drum with renewed strength, and the sound rolls across the dunes like distant thunder. Merchants stop their bargaining to stare. Children run closer, eyes wide, as your rhythm fills the air. The griots begin their chanting, verses of praise for the king, sung in rolling cadences that make even the wind pause. Historians still argue whether this performance was spontaneous devotion or calculated theater. You, standing there sweating behind your drum, know the answer is both. Later that evening, When the music fades, Musa calls his musicians closer. You kneel as he speaks, his tone soft but deliberate. He thanks you for your service, praises the power of music to move men's hearts faster than any sermon, and hands each performer a small nugget of gold. It glows warm in your palm, heavier than it looks. For a brief, ridiculous moment, you consider eating it just to taste what power feels like. When Musa dismisses the group, you wander off toward the edge of the camp. The salt wind cuts sharp, drying the sweat from your neck. You see one of the camel handlers sitting alone, staring into the darkness. He tells you quietly that 2 men died that day overheated, buried before sunset to keep the jackals away. You nod. Death has become a rhythm too, one that hides beneath every note you play. That night, the musicians gather around a low fire. Someone produces a battered ngoni and plucks a lazy tune about home. The kind of melody that aches, not because it's sad, but because it reminds you of water. You join in with soft percussion, your hands finding patterns they've known forever. The desert around you hums faintly, as if listening. One griot starts a story about a mythical musician who could charm spirits with his kora. According to legend, his songs were so beautiful that ghosts wept and returned to life. Historians still argue whether that story came from Mali or the Berbers, he adds with a grin. You laugh quietly, half from exhaustion, half from belief. And next morning, you leave Tagaza behind. The camels creak under their loads of salt. The men trudge forward, shadows already long in the dawn light. You drum to keep pace, but this time the rhythm feels different, slower, more deliberate, like the desert itself is playing along. For a while, the silence between beats grows longer. You listen to it carefully, realizing something. Music isn't only sound. It's also the space between the sounds, the waiting, the holding of breath. Maybe that's what makes the desert so musical, its endless pauses. By noon, you spot vultures circling far ahead, black specks twisting in the sky. Someone mutters a prayer. You keep playing, trying not to think about what they're circling. That night, your dreams are strange. You see a river flowing through the desert, lined with palm trees that whisper in rhythm with your drumming. Goldfish leap through the water, each one laughing like a child. You wake up smiling, unsure why. The desert has a way of blurring what's real and what's imagined. And you, caught between both, keep walking one heartbeat, one drumbeat at a time. The next stretch of the journey feels like time itself is melting. Days blend together, sunrise, sand, drumbeat, exhaustion, repeat. You lose count of how many dunes you've crossed. The horizon mocks you, always promising an oasis just out of reach. By now, the musicians move like shadows. Everyone's faces are veiled to protect from the burning air. Even laughter sounds brittle. You keep your drum wrapped when not playing, fearful that the skin might crack. Sometimes you press your ear against it, just to hear if it's still alive. At midday, Mansa Musa halts the caravan. You're told to prepare a performance again. A messenger from a northern tribe has arrived, bearing gifts of salt and horses. The King of Kings wants to demonstrate both gratitude and power. You set up your drum near the shade of a silk canopy, beside the griots and string players. When Musa appears, he's radiant again, layered in gold and indigo. His beard gleams with oil, his expression calm. You've seen men lose their minds under lesser heat, but Musa stands untouched, as if his faith forms a shield around him. Historians still argue whether his strength came from religion or sheer arrogance. The performance begins slowly. You tap a heartbeat rhythm, while the griots sing about the founding of Malai, the river spirits, and the ancestors who whisper in the wind. The foreign envoy watches, eyes wide, unable to hide awe. Then Musa orders a rain of gold dust, literally small pouches flung toward the guests. They burst open midair, glittering like fireflies, before sinking into the sand. The envoy's jaw drops. You barely keep from laughing. The griot beside you mutters, "That's one way to buy eternal fame." That night, the camp is restless. Some men brag about how the envoy will tell tales of this display from one end of the Sahara to the other. Others whisper that Musa spends too freely, that even kings have limits. You remember the gold nuggets still tied in your satchel, and you wonder if one day it'll be worth anything at all, or if, in the end, gold is just a trick the sun plays on greedy men. As darkness deepens, you hear a strange sound beyond the dunes. Faint singing carried on the wind. You pause, listening. The melody is foreign, but haunting Berber perhaps, or maybe something older. You follow the sound a little way, your feet sinking into cool sand. There, on a distant rise, you spot a small group of travelers, their torches flickering like dying stars. They're singing to their camels. You stand silently, transfixed. The song is both lonely and eternal. It's not for an audience, it's for the journey itself. You smile softly. Maybe every traveler in this desert carries their own rhythm, their own prayer. When you return to camp, one of the younger musicians asks what you are doing. "Listening to ghosts," you answer. He stares for a moment, then laughs, thinking it a joke. You don't correct him. The next morning, a dust storm hits. It arrives without warning. One moment clear sky, the next a choking wall of sand. You cover your face, clutch your drum, and crouch low. The air howls like 1,000 angry spirits. You can't see Musa, can't see the others. For a terrifying instant, you're sure this is how it ends, buried alive in gold and dust. Then, as suddenly as it came, the storm passes. Silence falls again, heavy and absolute. You stand, spitting grit from your teeth. Around you, the caravan looks like survivors of some cosmic punishment. You lift your drum and strike once softly, almost reverently. The sound cuts through the still air, a small declaration. We're still here. A few others join you, hesitant at first, then stronger. The beat grows a heartbeat, returning after death. By the time the sun sets again, the dunes look new, reshaped by the storm. Everything lost, everything found. And in that endless shimmering world, your rhythm carries on, steady as faith itself. When you finally reach the first true oasis, it feels like stepping into a hallucination. The dunes fall away, and suddenly there's color-green palms, thin reeds swaying, and the wet, almost electric smell of water. You hear laughter before you see the pool. Men are splashing, camels are kneeling, and somewhere nearby, a griot is already composing a song about the miracle of the wells. You sink to your knees, dipping your hands into the cool water. It feels like touching the sky. You drink greedily, the taste both sweet and dusty. The others cheer, singing verses of relief that rise like prayer. For the first time in weeks, you hear the music of joy rather than endurance. That night, Musa orders a celebration. He sits under a palm canopy, surrounded by attendants and scholars who still manage to look scholarly even in the desert. You and your fellow musicians are placed near the fire pit, ready to play. The feast begins with roasted lamb, dates, and bowls of thick honey. You can barely eat. Your stomach's forgotten what luxury feels like. Musa raises his goblet, golden as ever, and declares that Allah's mercy has carried them this far. The men shout, "Amin," loud enough to make the oasis birds scatter. You begin to play slowly, dreamily, matching the crackle of the fire. The griots join in, singing tales of kings who found salvation in deserts, and warriors who heard divine voices in their thirst. A scholar nearby leans toward another and whispers that even music can be an act of worship if the heart is pure. Historians still argue whether such sentiments were common among the Islamic scholars of Musa's court, but in this moment, faith and melody share the same breath. Then, as if on cue, Musa signals for something new. One of his guards brings forth a silver chest. opening it to reveal a small golden flute, inlaid with turquoise and ivory. It gleams like it's been carved from sunlight itself. He hands it to you. "Play," he says softly. Your hands tremble slightly. You've never held something so precious or so heavy with expectation. You raise it to your lips and blow, testing the first note. It comes out pure, piercing, and lonely. You shift, adjust your breath, and let the melody rise. It spirals upward, thin as smoke, curling through the palms and vanishing into the night. Everyone falls silent. Even the crackle of fire seems to hush. The sound is new, fragile, something beyond rhythm, like a memory trying to form words. You play until your lungs ache, until you feel the desert itself listening. When you finally lower the flute, Musa smiles. "You've given the desert a voice," he says. The words linger with you long after the fire dies. Later, when the camp sleeps, you sit alone by the water. The reflection of the moon trembles on the surface, broken by insects and ripples. You stare at your hands, thinking of everything they've done. Struck drums, plucked strings, now breathed life into gold. You wonder if this is what immortality feels like. Behind you, someone hums a low, soft tune. It's the young boy again, Musa's nephew. He asks if you think paradise will have music. You smile. "Of course," you whisper. "But only if the angels can keep rhythm." He laughs quietly, then falls asleep beside the pool. You stay awake, watching the moon fade behind clouds. The desert has been cruel, yes, but it has also stripped away everything unneeded. Out here, only faith, rhythm, and breath remain. You lift the flute once more, playing to the stars, not for an audience, not for glory, just to remind yourself that you're still alive. The sound floats into the cool air, soft as a sigh, and disappears into the vast, forgiving dark. The journey resumes at dawn, and you feel strangely lighter. Maybe it's the music still humming in your chest from last night, or maybe the oasis has washed away some of the desert's weight. Either way, when the caravan begins moving again, your drumbeat feels steadier, more confident. The air grows cooler as the route angles north. You pass occasional clusters of palms, and once, a ruined watchtower half swallowed by sand. One of the scholars claims it was built by traders from the old Ghana Empire. Another argues it's merely a mirage of heat and memory. Historians still argue which ancient hands first mapped these routes. But as you pass that lonely tower, you sense it has seen 1,000 caravans and buried half of them. At midday, the caravan halts in a small valley ringed by black rocks. Musa orders rest, but no one dares unpack fully. The place feels wrong.